At home, wearing black and red, the Sabres get the win against the Capitals. Now, 6 points out of the playoffs, but still in last place. Are the Sabres in striking distance, as Lindy Ruff put it, of the playoffs? Get to that question, the standings, the win, and I got to take on one individual Sabre. All ahead here on the Locked On Sabres podcast.
You're Locked On Sabres, your daily podcast on the Buffalo Sabres. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome in, and thanks for making today's edition of the Locked On Sabres podcast your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Be sure to check us out on YouTube where you can watch the show. Today's episode is presented by FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets if you win or lose your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Sneaky Joe DiBiase coming to you on a Tuesday as the Sabres get the W on Monday night at home against the Capitals. No Alex Ovechkin goal. He remains 23 back of Wayne Gretzky's record. Sabres did a very good job shutting him out. The Sabres get the win. There's a lot to get to from this game. Some things I want to branch off of from this game, including Mattias Samuelsson, who I thought had one of the worst plays of the game. But of course, there is some positive. They won the game. They had some really good play, I thought, throughout the 60 minutes of action. I thought they outplayed the Capitals in overtime that they should have won in OT, and then they finally got it in the shootout. So a lot to get to on today's show, including the standings. Lindy Ruff said after the game that they're within striking distance. Agree or disagree? They are 6 points out. They are also still in last place. It's an interesting question, and I think you could kind of go either side of it. And this win last night kind of puts that into question. If you would like to become a member of our Locked On Sabres text club and reach out to the show, you can do that by heading over to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnSabres. And yesterday, we asked the text club and we asked you, the listener, about Elias Pettersson and the big trade idea that everyone's talking about. You know, like even on our network. Like I saw Locked On Islanders. Gil is taking some time out to talk about Pettersson and a bunch of other teams. Like everybody wants in on Pettersson because he is that great of a talent. And had a bunch of different texts, had a bunch of different tweets. There was one that I did want to read about Pettersson here on the show. And this comes from Twitter, actually. Andrew tweets in, for me, Elias Pettersson and Dakota Joshua for Dylan Cousins, Mattias Samuelsson, Isak Rozan, and a 2026 first-round pick. Then go find a top-4 veteran, righty for power to really learn from. Fine with Gilbert being a third pair with Clifton. Trade Yoki Hardy to bring up Johnson. Okay, so a lot of things branching off there from that trade, but in essence, what you have is Pettersson and Dakota Johnson, and you're really putting a lot of stock in Cousins being the main piece of that deal. And then, you know, Samuelsson, Rozan, and a 2026 first-round pick. That's one of those trades where I got a lot of this. I got some good ones, too, from listeners. And I'm not even saying that's, like, the worst. That, to me, is the type of offer that I would expect from Kevyn Adams without knowing what Adams really is like in those negotiations. His reputation is he makes an offer like that where he's overvaluing his own players. Dylan Cousins, Mattias Samuelsson, Isak Rozan do not carry that kind of value in any way, especially when you are going to be locked into a bidding war with other teams and your stuff has to be more enticing to Vancouver than their stuff. Why would Vancouver rush up to the podium to announce a deal like, oh, we're getting Mattias Samuelsson? Holy cow, can you believe the Sabres are offering him? Isak Rozan, wow, can you believe they're offering their sixth best prospect who was drafted in the first round 5 years ago and is still in the AHL? Oh, like what? Why would you expect Vancouver to be excited about that? That is one of those deals that I think happens too often. And I'm not blasting Andrew here. Like, I think it's a reasonable idea on the surface, and it's not alone in it. Like, I think that's the type of offer you see from a lot of fans. You're not playing the game right. You're not outbidding your opponent. You're doing the video game machine of, let me plug 4 things into NHL EA Sports, and then the computer is going to simulate that one trade and then going to tell me if it's fair or not. And if it is, if the green bar is up enough, then they're going to take the deal. It's not how it works. It's a marketplace. And the GM's job is to execute in that marketplace and is to change the value of players, change an offer based on what the price is out there. That to me is how, I would approach these mock trades. And I got a lot of feedback on my mock trade from yesterday about Pettersson, that it's not enough, that even though the idea was, let me outbid the others, that's not going to get the job done. Here was that trade, if you missed it, for our YouTube listeners or watchers. Pettersson and Tyler Myers for Dylan Cousins, Bo Byram, and a 2025 first-round pick, top 5 protected. And even that, I got some feedback, like, you got to throw a prospect in. You got to throw Yuri Kulik into that as a 4th piece, because someone else is going to do that. Someone else is going to have an offer as good as Dylan Cousins, Bo Byram in a first, and there's going to be one of 30 GMs that's going to say, you know what? I want this deal. I want to close on this deal. So you know what? I'll give you my best prospect along with these other 3 pieces. You don't have to think that's great value. Somebody else is going to do that. And if you want the player that badly, you got to be willing to be that team. And the Sabres often in their history are not that team. Tim Murray was for like a year and a half, and then even he stopped doing it at the end. The Sabres have not been a team like that. So I think you got to go nuts. You got to go nuts if you're going to get a player like this. So really good discussion, though. I've enjoyed it in our text club. I've enjoyed it on social media, and I hope it continues. I hope Pettersson is really on the market, because it's a very exciting trade idea for everybody. All right, let's get to Sabres and Capitals. The Sabres get the win 4-3. They blew the lead a bunch of different times in this game. But the Capitals never led. The Sabres, they allowed the Capitals to tie the game 3 separate occasions, including with just over 4 minutes to play, where a puck goes off of Owen Power's glove, and it was kind of unfortunate, pretty unlucky, and that tied the game. And it's like, here we go. But really, they hadn't played that poorly in my eyes. And even that goal, like, I think they did react to that goal like, hey, we're good. We're playing well. That was just a bad break. We're doing fine, because they played pretty well after that, I thought. So that moment was tough, but you had some really great performances in this game, including from Alex Tuch. Alex Tuch was awesome in this game. Scores the first goal. The second goal, unassisted, where he is, I've called him the best forechecker in the game. I might want to change that to like poke checker in the game. He is so fast and lengthy, and he's good with that stick, that you get moments like that where the defenseman is just a little too casual at the point, and Tuch is almost like a ball hawking safety in football, where if you're just a little too casual or careless with the ball, or in this case, the puck, he's going to make you pay for it. And that's what happened here. He got a stick on puck, and once he's behind the defenseman, he is fast enough to where you're 99 times out of 100 not going to catch him unless your name is Connor McDavid or Nathan McKinnon or Cale Makar. So Tuch's able to get through, and then he scores. And what a goal in the shootout. What a goal. Backhand, forehand. He barely gets it across. He almost got robbed, but he had the goalie completely out of the net in the shootout. So, and that, of course, was the tying goal to keep it alive at that time. The Sabres, if they did not score that Tuch goal, it would have been over. So good on him. Helped keep the game alive. He got them the first 2 goals of the game. Tuch was awesome. No doubt the number 1 star of the game. That's what he was. He'd be my sneaky number 1 star of the game as well. So that happened. And the power play continues to happen. Really good night for the power play. They only had 2 opportunities, but they had a lot of chances on both. And Tage Thompson, with his 103-mile-per-hour one-timer, scores the fastest goal in the NHL in over 4 years. And NHL Edge tweeted out, that not only does Thompson now have the hardest shot in the league with a 106 a couple weeks ago, he also has the hardest goal at 103.7. So Thompson, I mean, he's the hardest shot king in the league right now. You know, like maybe he needs to do it at the All-Star game to officially get that title. But Al McInnes, Zdeno Chara, Shea Weber, some of the hardest shot kings of the past, like Thompson is that right now. Now that we have player tracking, like we have in puck tracking, we have the opportunity to prove that. Thompson's shot is lethal. And the power play is now 8 of 17 on the power play in the last, I think it's 7 games. Lance Lysowski, the Buffalo News, had this stat yesterday, and the Sabres scored again. They are the number 1 power play team in the league over that period of time. Like their power play has heated up. And, you know, that was around the time that we did a show here where I got into like, what do they need to do to go on the run that they need to go on to make the playoffs? And I had, because I think this team is limited and I believe this team has holes all over it, I believe they needed 2 things. 2 things have to happen for this team to go on a run that'll get them into the postseason. They need an elite power play. They got that. Right now, since that day, they've had an elite power play. Zucker is most of it. In that time, he has 5 of the goals. Thompson has 2. The goaltending, they're getting it on and off. He had a good night last night. I thought Luukkonen had a bad night the other night. He had a great night in St. Louis. Like Luukkonen's a little back and forth right now. They're going to need that to be more consistent. But the power play is showing up lately. And they are doing different things. They are moving around. There was the first power play of the night. They are all moving. There was a point where nobody was in front of the net, which you don't want for more than a few seconds. But they had the Capitals kind of out of sorts because everybody was cycling. Everybody was switching. They all were ready for one-timers. Like the Capitals didn't know who to cover. And again, like you might want to do that with 4 guys instead of 5. And I think the Sabres didn't mean to have 5 guys all set up for one-timers. You want 1 guy in front of the net at least, and then everybody else ready. But you're seeing more movement. You're seeing more switching. I think you're seeing more fluidity to their power play. And I think that's a big reason why it's looked better. The biggest reason it's looked better, though, is Zucker. Zucker, I mean, he almost scored on the first one where he has it on the right side of the net. He takes it out in front from the side. He almost cashes it in. The goalie, Lindgren, got over just in time. Zucker's the number 1 reason. He's been finishing around the net. But Thompson in that one-timer, you know, that's always going to be the first thing that other teams are thinking of when they're game planning. So power play. And then the last thing I want to mention statistically before I get to Samuelsson, I want to talk about Samuelsson from this game. And the second goal the Capitals scored is just such an egregious error mentally that it's an instinct play that almost cost them a game. You can't have a moment like Samuelsson had, especially for the type of player he is. I'll get to that later. Shout out Zach Benson. Zach Benson with another night where the numbers look good, and when he's on the ice, the other team just does not have the puck. He's not the most dangerous player in the world right now, but he is so smart. He is so good at retaining possession, making the right pass, not turning the puck over, forcing turnovers on the other end, winning battles more often than he should for his size. Benson, in the last, since it's kind of a cherry-picked date, I won't lie, but it's in the last 7 games. Or 6 games, excuse me. Since December 27th, Zach Benson is 14th in the NHL in Corsi for percentage. Shot attempts, he's the 14th best player by percentage since December 27th. And in that same amount of time on the Buffalo Sabres, he is also the best Sabre. He's at 70 shot attempts for. This is all at 5-on-5, by the way. Benson, when he's on the ice, the Sabres have 70 shot attempts for, 42 shot attempts against. This is 70 minutes of hockey, by the way, that Benson's been out there in this time period. During those 70 minutes of hockey, the Sabres have scored 4 goals, the opponent has had 1. They've outshot the opponent 34-21. The expected goals are 3.1 for the Sabres, 2.3 for the opposition. Scoring chances are 35-21 in favor of the Sabres. High danger scoring chances are 17-11 in favor of the Sabres. The Sabres, when Benson's been on the ice in the last 2 weeks, have been the better team almost every time. And he is giving you the best results in those categories of any Sabre. In fact, he is 7% better in Corsi for percentage, shot attempt percentage, 7% better than any other Buffalo Sabre. Kulik is number 2, Krebs number 3, and those are the 2 guys that play with him the most. So shout out Benson. Continues to look good and stir things up. He continues to do that too. When we come back with the win over... By the way, I can't get out of here without mentioning JJ Peterka. A great night for Peterka. He has looked a little better in recent nights, and he added 2 assists in this game. We thought he scored, and it was changed at midnight to Tuck's goal, the first one. And it really looked tough to tell if it did touch Tuck. Peterka, though, a great shot, and he scored in the shootout, the winner as well. So Peterka, shout out, of course, for him, as he had a really good night. All right, when we come back, what the win means and whether or not it's fair to say the Sabres are within striking distance of the playoffs. Get to that when we come back here in the Locked On Sabres podcast. Today's episode of Locked On Sabres is presented by FanDuel Sportsbook. Football playoffs are almost here. From big upsets to game-winning drives, the NFL postseason is better with FanDuel. Right now, new customers, you bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. So ahead of, you got action on, by the way, college football too. What a weekend of football in addition to all the hockey that we got. You got Thursday college football playoff, Friday college football playoff. You got Saturday NFL wild card. You got Sunday NFL wild card, Monday night NFL wild card. I mean, you got 5 days in a row of important football, of stakes. And if you want to add some stakes, or you like a line, or you like a prop, be sure to head over to FanDuel. $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Win or lose. $200 in bonus bets, win or lose on that $5 bet. The FanDuel app gives you everything you need for live bets, same game parlays, and so much more. Visit the website and check out FanDuel.com to join today. Get started with $200 in bonus bets. It's FanDuel.com. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the National Football League. Back here on the Locked On Sabres podcast, the Sabres win over the Capitals. They got outshot just barely by the Caps, 28-27. Power play, they scored in this game. Shot attempts were 65-58 in favor of Washington. Remember, they spent a lot of the third period down a goal, which kind of contributes to this. Scoring chances, 31-22 for Washington. Quality, though, of those chances and quality of those shots, Sabres expected goals was 3.2. Washington's only 2.0. So Sabres would have been expected to win that game by expected goals. So what does the win mean for the standings? And is it fair to consider that they are within striking distance of the playoffs? I made a mistake, by the way, in our last show. I don't know what I was looking at. I think I said 11 points. I had the standings open. I was looking at it. I don't know what in my head triggered 11 as the difference. It was 8. So going into the night, Sabres were 8. They are now sitting at 6 points out of the postseason. 6 points out of the playoffs. And that spot is currently occupied by the Tampa Bay. Oh, what am I here standing? You know what maybe happened? I had a different day open and I just did it again because I was looking back at standings where they were a year ago, whatever. Sabres are 35 points in 41 games. The Montreal Canadiens have the last playoff spot, 41 points in 40 games. The Sabres are 6 points back of a playoff spot. They are also in dead last. Everybody is ahead of them. Islanders and Rangers are 2 points ahead. Red Wings are 3 points ahead. Flyers are 4. Blue Jackets and Senators are both 5, and then Penguins and Canadiens are both 6. They have to climb over every single one of those teams to break the playoff drought. So, yeah, 6 doesn't sound like a lot. It really doesn't. But I'd rather be 9 points out and only have 2 teams to climb over. I think that probably checks out. That's kind of a guess that the odds would be better. The Sabres were 3.3% to make the playoffs going into the night. They're a little higher after last night. I haven't seen the updated total, but of course they would be a little higher, not much. So 6 points is, reasonable. Lindy said it's within striking distance. Do you agree? And I asked that question to our texters, and I got a couple good answers like, yes, if they trade for Pettersson. And I agree with that. If they trade for Pettersson today, I'd be like, all right, baby, let's go. We got a star center added to the mix. Let's go. Their biggest problem has been scoring and generating offense on a consistent basis. Now you get your best offensive player just thrown in. A lot of fans, I would say about 60% said that 6 points is not within striking distance. And a lot of it is all of those teams they have to go ahead of and what their record would have to be to climb over all those teams. And just the idea that they're capable of that, making up 6 points. I don't think 6 points, if you're the New York Rangers, who are 5 points back right now, if you ask me today, the Rangers are only 2 points better than the Buffalo Sabres. If you ask me, are they capable of making up a 6-point gap with half a season to go? I'd say yes. The reason? I've seen that roster put together a run equivalent to what it would take. I know that roster is good. I know that roster's got talent, I should say. I know Mika Zibanejad is a legit top 6 center. I know Chris Kreider's a 30-goal scorer. I know Artemi Panarin is a star. I know Adam Fox is one of the best defensemen in the world. I know Igor Shesterkin is one of the best defensemen in the world. I know that roster is deep. Keandre Miller, you just go down the list. I know there is talent all over the place. It's just not meshing well. It's not being put together right now. So I know they're capable. I don't think the Sabres are capable of the same run that the Rangers are capable of. I don't think their ceiling is as high. And that's where, for me, it doesn't really feel like they're within striking distance. Now, that can change quickly, and maybe that is a counter to my point of, well, if they win their next 2 and now they're 3 points out, they're in it. Doesn't that mean they're within striking distance? And I think that's the best counter is, if you are just a couple games away from feeling like you're in the race, doesn't that mean you're within striking distance? And maybe that is true. So maybe Lindy's not wrong when he says that. It's tough for me to say yes when I don't really think they're capable of getting in. I don't think they're capable of going on the run in these final 41 games as a roster to get in. And that's beyond all the mental stuff. That's beyond, them blowing leads. Here they are blowing another lead last night. I know it was kind of unlucky, unfortunate, but it happened. And then they were able to make up for it and win it. So it's a good question, though. 35 points in 41 games. I mean, they're on a 70-point pace. That's part of this, right? Like, you're on a 70-point pace. I guess the good news, and this is going to be more frustrating for Sabre fans and for me if they miss this year. The current playoff pace in the NHL is like 83, or for the East, it's like 83 points. That is historically bad. It has never been that low. And that's low by like 7-8 points. I can't believe that that's going to end up being the pace, which is why I don't even want to play the game of right now today. Well, 35 points the Sabres are at. To get to 83, which is the pace, I've only got to do this. I do not buy it's only going to take 83 points. I do not buy it's only going to take 84 points. There is no way to me, no way that one of these 8 teams in front of the Sabres aren't going on a run. One of them, Ottawa or Pittsburgh, or if it's Philly or Montreal, anybody. Probably not Philly. They only have 9 regulation wins on the year, less than the Sabres. But somebody's pushing that pace up. Somebody is. You want it to be the Sabres, I guess, right? But that's kind of the point. You got to do better than 83. You got to do better than 84. You got to do better than 85. You probably have to be at least 88, 89, 90 to think you have any sort of realistic shot. And that's when you start to compute, okay, well, then that means I need this record to get to 90, and I don't buy it. I don't buy 55 points in 41 games being in the range of outcomes for this roster. I don't. It's for another roster, for another team, the Rangers. I would say yes. For this team, with this group of forwards, where I've got like one or two scorers I can count on night to night, with half a defense core that I don't trust to do the right thing on a play-to-play basis, with a goaltender that's rocky at best right now, I don't think they're capable of 55 points in 35 games. And I think you got to get at least that. I think you got to get to 90. Even though, again, the pace right now is a good amount lower than that. There's just no way. It'd be crazy. But I didn't even get to the thought of how frustrating is it going to be for Sabre fans if the pace does hold and the Sabres miss. If this was a year where, hey, it only took 85 points to get in and you still don't break the drought. Crazy. It'd be like if during the Bills playoff drought, there was a year where, it only took 7 wins to get in this year. And the Sabres and the Bills went 5-11. That would be the equivalent of it. Time out here. When we come back. All right, I saved the biggest negative energy for the end of the show, because there was one play that just drove me nuts from last night between the Sabres and the Capitals. And it was courtesy of Mattias Samuelsson. And I got to get a thought in on him before we wrap up the show here. That when we come back here on the Locked On Sabres podcast. Today's episode of Locked On Sabres is presented by Rocket Money. Did Rocket Money help you find any subscriptions that you forgot about or that you were paying for twice? That could definitely happen. You could have a few subscriptions that you don't even realize you're still paying for, and Rocket Money make it easy to track them all down. I had a subscription to watch junior hockey games because I just wanted to watch like a game or two a couple of years ago, and I watched that 1 or 2 games, and then I forgot about the subscription. And then 2 years went by, and I don't know. I don't remember how it got hidden. Like somehow it was hidden from me, and bam, I realized, oh my gosh, I've been paying for the subscription for 2 years. It was nothing crazy expensive. Just like, man, 2 years adds up. And if I had done Rocket Money earlier, I would have known, and I would have been able to get way ahead of that years ago. So Rocket Money, it's a personal finance app, helps you find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, helps you lower your bills so you can grow your savings. It brings everything together in one place, whether it's subscriptions, your spending habits, or even the goals you want to hit this year. Rocket Money is over 5 million users, saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using the app's premium features. All those apps, it's hard to keep track. Rocket Money is going to help you do that. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions, reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/locked-on. That's rocketmoney.com/locked-on. rocketmoney.com/locked-on. Back here on the Locked On Sabres podcast, Sabres win over the Capitals 4-3 in a shootout. It's only 11 regulation wins on the year for the Sabres in 41 games as we are at the mid-season point. That's not all that impressive. Let's see if they can get back in it. I'm skeptical. Last night, they won. The second goal of last night's game really drove me crazy. As somebody that whenever I played hockey on any level, and that goes to even now, like if I'm playing beer league now, or if I'm playing roller hockey now, which I do once a week, if I'm playing EASHL in the NHL video game with some buddies, if I'm doing anything hockey related, I'm a defenseman. And maybe these plays drive me crazier than any others. Anything a forward could do, anything a goalie could do. Puck staring, puck watching, and not tying up a body in front of the net drives me nuts. Not making an attempt to. If Jacob Bryson, who's limited, if he has a tough time tying up Tom Wilson in front of the net, but he tries, but he just gets out muscled, who am I mad at? I'm not mad at Jacob Bryson. He's doing the best he can. I'm mad at the GM for having a guy like that on the ice and no bigger bodies, right? Last night, second goal of the game, there's Tom Wilson, who is very tough to handle in front of the net. No doubt about it. One of the toughest players to move from. Very good player, and he's huge, and he's a bully, and he is strong as a bull. I get it. There he is at the 8:30 mark of the second period, and he is standing in front of the net. If I were to tell you, stop it, bam, 8:34. There is a capital player 21. Who's 21? He's got it in front of the net in the slot with all by himself. And I were to tell you, Luukkonen's going to make this save, and Tom Wilson's in front. Who is the guy on the team you want sitting there with him that cannot allow him to just stand there and get the rebound opportunity? By the way, the player was Protas. Protas. He takes the shot, and the puck comes off, and Wilson is not marked. He's not touched. There's no effort to move him from the front of the net or from the side. There is no ability or effort to tie up his stick even. The guy I would tell you I would want on paper to be in that position, the guy who's paid to be in that position, is Mattias Samuelsson. He is 6'4", 225 pounds. That the Sabres, I know you might want a different guy on the roster for it, but these are the options you get, right? These are the options I'm giving you. He's, by the way, same size as Wilson. Samuelson's actually 5 pounds bigger, same height as Tom Wilson, who's out there. Samuelson's the guy that this is what he's paid for. And go watch that playback. They actually, on the highlight reel, you can watch it too. And I was watching the game back this morning, and the back angle camera shows it perfectly, where the puck is turned over. The Capitals get it in the slot. And the moment that shot is about to be taken, Samuelsson he knows Wilson is there, because right before Wilson sets up shop, Samuelsson gives him a light cross check, like to show, like, okay, I know you're here. And then he never looks at him again. And he's in front of Wilson, and he's almost screening Luukkonen. He doesn't quite. And he never makes an effort to move Wilson or tie him up. He is staring at the puck. That is what he is paid to do. That's the role he needs to serve on this team. Move Tom Wilson or try. Just give me the effort to move Tom Wilson from the front of the net. It doesn't happen, and they're both looking down at the puck. Samuelsson never gets anything on Wilson at all. Never touches him. And bang, it's in the back of the net. Brutal. I don't need you to be Scott Stevens on that play. I don't need you to be Chris Pronger. I don't need you to be this big, bulking man that's going to throw Tom Wilson to the ice. I need you to mark him. That's it. I just need you to mark your guy. And you know what? From there, do your best. You're 6'4", 225. If you can't win that battle, we'll throw our hands up and go, well, it's Tom Wilson. You know, like, it's strongest player and one of the strongest players in the league. I get it. It's a tough assignment. He didn't take the assignment. In the first place, he didn't take the assignment. And that was my problem with that play last night by Mattias Samuelsson. He is supposed to be defensively responsible. He's supposed to be a guy that helps Luukkonen out in front of the net. And in that moment, he failed. And he's lucky it didn't cost them the game. It tied him at that point. They should have been ahead in that game going into the third more than they were, and they weren't. So that led me to, and there was a lot of this in social media after that play, reminder of the buyout. Just a reminder, we talked about it a couple months ago. There's a buyout option out there on Mattias Samuelsson. It's weird because he's only 24 years old and he just signed an extension, but his buyout is super reasonable. And I don't even know the mechanics of why this is the case, but all I know is if they bought him out this offseason, instead of 5 years remaining on the deal at his current $4.285 million cap hit, you would be paying him for 10 years at $714,000, which is nothing. It's a rounding error on the cap. So maybe that's an idea. I doubt if Kevin Adams is the GM, though, he'll do that because that's one of his guys. And there's an idea out there that he overvalues his players. Like, to me, it's one of his guys. I don't think Adams would move on from Samuelsson. If there was another GM in place by that time, then maybe there is something to talk about. Because, again, it's a long time. It's a decade-long buyout, but it's no money. It's absolutely no money. And the way he's played on the season as a whole, I do think he's played a little bit better as of late on the overall. But that was a bad moment last night. It's a reminder that he's having a bad season overall, and a really bad season overall. All right, so just a quick rant there on Samuelsson. That's going to do it for us, though, today here on the Locked On Sabres podcast, Sabres and Senators on Thursday. So come back tomorrow, and if you got a question or a comment, we'll do a little mailbag maybe tomorrow, so you can hit us up on Twitter or on our text club, joinsubtext.com/LockedOnSabres, where you sign up, and then you're just texting from there. If you want to hit us up on the Locked On Podcast Network to get some Bills coverage, Locked On Bills with Joe Marino, or you can hit up Steal and Flip on Locked On Fantasy Hockey for your daily tips and tricks throughout the week. Talk to you tomorrow here on the Locked On Sabres podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.